Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav and we'll be learning today Mirz Hashem Daf Kuf Chaf Hey Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn the halachas of the Daled Minim. Very interesting share today. It's an amazing thing. Would you have guessed that the topic of how precisely to make the Na'anuim is an immensely complicated topic. Immensely complicated. There's so much talk about it in the various achronim. We're not even going to scratch the surface really, but it's an interesting thing. I've always said, back when I was saying a Daf Yomi share, I used to tell people the hardest mesechtas, Erevin is very difficult, Yavamis is very difficult, Nida is very difficult. The truth is, where do you have immense difficulty? When you're dealing with derabbanans. You see, da'araisas are black and white. If there's a question of a da'araisa, so if it's a da'araisa, it's either kosher or puzzle. You're either yoitza or you're not yoitza. It's a beferish halach in the Torah Kedosha. It's a da'araisa. It's like the first Gemara in Sukkah. The first Gemara in Sukkah asks the famous kasha. In the first Mishnah in Sukkah, the Mishnah says, Sukkah gavaya me'esrim amma. If the Sukkah is higher than 20 amas, psula, it's puzzle. By Erevin, it says, when you're speaking about a mavui that has a kaira, that has a beam going over the opening of the mavui, because the Chazal said that we need a heker, we need a reminder that you could carry from the mavui out to the Rishus HaRabim. We need a reminder to remind us that the din of the mavui is different than the din of the Rishus HaRabim. Over there, the Mishnah says, kaira that's gavaya me'esrim amma, if the beam is more than 20 amas tall, yema'et, you should lower it. So the first Gemara in Masechta Sukkah, the Gemara asks the kasha. I don't understand. How come by Sukkah it says if it's more than 20 amas tall, it's puzzle? By Kaira, by Erevin, it says if it's more than 20 amas tall, you should lower it. Why don't we say by Sukkah, Sukkah Gavaya Me'esrim Amma, you might. If it's more than 20 amas tall, lower the schach. So it should be lower and it should be kosher. And the Gemara answers, by Sukkah we're dealing with a daraisa. By Erevin we're talking about a darabbanan. By Sukkah, where it's a daraisa, we could say it's puzzle, because a daraisa is black and white. Either it's kosher or it's puzzle. It's a halach in the Torah Kedosha. It's a daraisa. If it's kosher, it's kosher. If it's puzzle, it's puzzle. If it's over 20 amas tall, it's puzzle. By kaira, what are you going to say? By kaira, you're not going to say a kaira that's more than 20 amas tall is puzzle. Like the Gemara says, man pasluha. Who said it's puzzle? This is a darabanan. It's not a daraisa. So instead, the Chazal tell you, if it's more than 20 amas tall, that's not the way we want it, you should lower it. But again, a daraisa is black and white, a darabanan is not. So with the different psulim that we've spoken about when it comes to the Daled Minim, very often it's very simple. We could say this is kosher, this is puzzle. Now we have machlekes and machlekes rishayim, machlekes achrayim, exactly what the psul is, exactly what the shear is, exactly how it works. But we could say kosher, puzzle. But when it comes to something like the Na'anuim is not a daraisa. The Na'anuim are a darabanan. To a certain extent, it's based on divrei Said, it's based on Kabbalah. So we're dealing with much more of a gray area. And there's so many different opinions of exactly how the Na'anuim should be done, and how many, and when you should shake and when you shouldn't shake, and which direction that you could go. It's amazing to me how complex this topic is. In any case, we're going to start off the bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch on Kuf Chaf Hey Amud Aleph Siman Taf Reish Nun Aleph Sif Yud, says the Mechaber, Yakif Derech Yamin Benanoi. You should go around to the right when you do the Na'anuim. Now the assumption is that you're going to be standing facing Mizrach. For sure, here in North America, when we daven, we face Mizrach, because Yerushalayim is to the east of us, maybe a little bit southeast, but it is primarily to the east of us. So we're starting off facing Mizrach. We're starting off facing east. Okay, so you make the first Na'anuim to the east. Then you turn to the right, which means now you're turning to the south. Then after the south, you go to the back, which is Ma'ariv, which is west. And then you go around to the other side, which is Tzafain, which is north. So you're going east, south, west, north, and then up and then down. Like the Mechaber says, Yakif Derech Yamin Benanoi, you go around to the right, when you make the Na'anuim, Mizrach, east, Daraim, south, Ma'ariv, west, Tzafain, north. Back to Kuf Chaf Heyom. And Aleph says the Mishnah Berurah is cut Mem Zayin. Yaakif derech yamin beninuai mizrach daraim v'chuloi. You go around to the right, starting from the east and going around to the right. V'chein ha'etik b'derech ha'chayim u'b'chaye adam. And so it is brought down in the Sefer Derech HaChaim and in the Chaye Adam. Techein hu haminig ha'poshut b'medinaseinu. This is the accepted and simple minig that we have in our regions. V'atam, and the reason is the Chachamim hishiru eisanu tamid. The Chachamim always adjure us and tell us shetamid tikach esaderech shehu biyamin shalacha, that we're always supposed to go around to the right. B'makom sheyesh yamin usmail lefanecha. Whenever we have a choice of going right or left, tivcha lecha hayamin shalacha. You should always pick the right. And we see this very clearly in the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, when the avodas hakarbonos was done, the kohen went up the word for it just escaped my mind, but the kevish, the ramp. The kohen went up the ramp, going up to the top of, not the top of the mizbeach, but going to the sovev, going to the ledge that went around near the top of the mizbeach. Now, when the kohen was standing on the kevesh and he was facing the mizbeach, he was facing tzafon. Mizrach was to his right, Ma'ariv was to his left, Durham south was behind him, north was in front of him. So he walked up the kevesh, he's walking towards the north. Now, when he gets up to the kevesh, even if there's an avodah that he needs to do, let's say, on the southwestern corner, he's got to go up and he's got to first turn to the right, so he's going to the Mizrach, and then he's got to walk his way around. So when you have a choice to turn right or left, you always turn the right way first. So kol pina sha'ata paina, all of the turns that you make, einay paina ela liyamin. You're always supposed to turn to the right when you have an equal choice. Continues the Chavetz Chaim. Ve'ein chilik bein iter le'einay iter. He brings down from the Magen Avram that in the context of this halacha, there's no difference between a righty and a lefty. We saw previously in the halachas of the Daled Minim that sometimes there could be a difference between a righty and a lefty. We had the interesting machlokes between the Mechaber and the Ramah. Does the iter, does the lefty take the Daled Minim in his left hand? Does he take the lulav? Most of us righties take the lulav in the right hand because it's 3 mitzvahs as opposed to the esrog, which is 1 mitzvah. The Ramah said that a lefty, an iter, should take the lulav bundle in his left hand. So you see, sometimes there is a chilik between the right and left, how you deal with it between a righty and a lefty. Over here says the Chavetz Chaim, when it comes to this question of where you should turn when you make the nanuim, no difference between a righty and a lefty. And the truth is, it makes sense that it should be that way, because when it comes to the question of which hand you should take the mitzvah in, that's based on the concept that when it comes to the Daled Minim, you need a lekicha tama. We said that the requirement of ulekachtem, where the Gemara darshans that we need a lekicha tama, we need a complete lekicha, that has different ramifications. But one of the ramifications is that the person has to be doing a real lekicha, a real act of taking. Now, it's possible that for a lefty to accomplish a lekicha tama, he has to use his left hand, because you have to use the more chashava, the stronger hand, in order for it to be a lekicha tama. And for a lefty, the left hand is the stronger hand. So in the context of that halacha, we can see why we might make a difference between a lefty and a righty. But when it comes to the question of which direction you should turn, that has nothing to do with the righty or the lefty. It has nothing to do with the person himself, his right hand versus his left hand. It has to do with a universal question. Which direction, not which one of your hands is more chashuv to you. Which direction is a more chashuv direction? And the rule is kol pina shata paina and a paina liyamin. So that is equal between a righty and a lefty. And now the Chavetz Chaim says, V'ata now, asader b'kitzara, I will give you a short, asader means I will arrange for you in a short way, seder hana'anuim, the proper way, the proper method of performing the na'anuim, kefi ma shenohug b'medinaseinu, in accordance with the way we are noyig, says the Chavetz Chaim, in our regions. Seder hana'anuim l'ruchais. The proper seder of performing the na'anuim in the different directions is thus. Yachzer panav lemizrach. You begin with facing to the Mizrach, because most of our shuls in the northern hemisphere, we are generally speaking facing Mizrach. So you stand facing the Mizrach. V'shedroi shaluliv, and the shedra of the lulav, the spine of the lulav, litzad panav, is facing you. And we said earlier that that's based on divrei Kabbalah, that the shedra is supposed to be facing you. V'yaseh shloisha halachos lemizrach, and you make 3 extensions with the lulav away from your body towards the Mizrach. Ushloisha hava'os, and 3 times you're going to bring the lulav back to you. So you're going to go 1, that's 1 extension, 1, that's 1 return. A second extension, a second return, a third extension, and a third return. This is in accordance with what we saw from the Ramah yesterday. We learned the Ramah yesterday. The Mechaber said you only extend once, and when you extend, you make 3 shakes, and then you come back and you make 3 shakes. But there's only 1 extension and 1 return. The Ramah said no, 3 extensions, 3 returns. And that's why the Chavetz Chaim says here, that's what we do. 3 extensions, 3 returns. Vahainu, i.e., this means, Shemoilich yadai im halulav mikenegdai vahala, you extend your hands with the lulav bundle, mikenegdai, from being right next to you, vahala, and outwards, away from you, shalosh pa'amim, 3 times, and you're going to have 3 returns. V'nachain, and the Chavetz Chaim says, it is proper, shegam yikaskes be'olin, that you should shake and knock the leaves of the lulav b'shas halacha v'ha'ava, at the time of the extension and the bringing back. So this is like we said yesterday when we went through this. So as you extend, you shake, and as you come back, you shake. And again, this is in line with the Ramah that we saw yesterday. The Ramah said in Sif Tes, in the parentheses, Toiref halulav umekaskes ha'olin b'chol ni'anua. When you do the nanuim, which the Ramah says the extension and the bringing back is part of the nanuim, you're supposed to shake the lulav while you do the nanuim. And the truth is that the Sharat Tzion, if you look at the Sharat Tzion over here in Ois Katan Nun Tes, he says that we do this Lotzeis Gam Das HaRambam to accomplish it, to fulfill the words of the Rambam. Because the Rambam, like I read it to you yesterday, the Rambam says, Moilich u'mina'anea roish halulav gimel pamim. You extend and shake the lulav 3 times. So the lashon of the Rambam indicates that while you extend and while you bring back the lulav, you're shaking the rosh of the lulav. And again, this is in line with what we saw from the Ramah yesterday. So again, according to the Ramah, your nanuim in the direction of Mizrach would be like this. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Okay, and you're going to do that in every direction, says the Chavetz Chaim. Ubishas hava. Now this is very interesting. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ubishas hava, when you bring the lulav back to your body, yakrivai harbe el gufai, you should bring it close to your guf, neged hechazeh, right by your breast. So he's saying like this: don't do this. Imagine I was standing. So I'm here holding my lulav and esrig. I'm holding my lulav and esrig. Now, if you see, the lulav and esrig they're not next to me. They're out over here. So some people end up doing this. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. When you bring the lulav back, bring it back right next to you. And then go out again, and then bring it back right next to you. Now, why is that? So the Mishnah Berurah doesn't explain here in the Mishnah Berurah why that is. But if you take a look at the Ois Katan Samach with the Sharat Tzion, and you look at Sharat Tzion Ois Katan Samach, he says, Lotzeis divrei hataz. This is in order to fulfill the words of the Taz, Shekosav le'inyan hava. What the Taz writes when he speaks about the hava of returning and bringing back the lulav to your body. If you look at the Taz, what the Taz says is very interesting. The Taz points out that if we go with the Ramah in Sif Tes said, "Ha'halacha v'hahava hi atzma hanianua." The act of extending the lulav and bringing the lulav back, that's part and parcel of the nanuim. So going out is part of the nanuim, and bringing back is part of the nanuim. Now, if you don't bring it all the way back to your body, suggests the Taz, that might not really constitute an act of hava, of bringing it back. If you're standing by Hallel, holding the lulav bundle and the esrog a little bit away from your body, and you do this and this, you didn't really do a hava. You didn't bring it to you. All you did was you brought the lulav back to the default position. Now, even, let's say the halacha was that you did not require a hava. All you needed was a halacha. So you went out, that's a halacha. Now you have to do a second halacha. What are you going to do? Do that? Can't do that. So in order to do the second halacha, you need to bring the lulav back to the default original position. But, says the Taz, that's not called a hava. That's not called bringing it to you. You just brought it to the neutral position. In order to accomplish a hava, you need to bring it to your body. And that's why the Chavetz Chaim says it's not enough to just come back to that neutral default position. You got to bring it to your body. And after you do these three halachas and hayvos and na'anuim to the Mizrach, yate roish halulav l'daroim, then, says the Chavetz Chaim, what you should do is, let's say I am right now facing east. I'm facing Mizrach. So I did my nanuim to the Mizrach. Now I have to do my nanuim to the south, right? Because we go east, and then we turn to the right, and we do south. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you did this, now you got to do it to the south. He says, you don't got to turn your body to the south. You just got to turn the lulav and the esrog. You do this. So I'm bringing it back to my chest, I'm bringing it back to my breast, but I'm not turning my body. That's what the Chavetz Chaim says over here. Let's read it inside. V'achakach, 2 lines from the bottom. Yate roish halulav l'darim. You should tilt the top of the lulav to the south. V'yasagam kein shalish pamim halacha v'hava. And you should do 3 times an extension and bringing back. Hakol kamay b'mizrach. The same way you did it towards the east. Extend while shaking. Bring it back to your chest while shaking. But you don't have to turn your body. You don't have to turn your face or your body towards the side where you're doing the nanuim. You only have to turn the top of the lulav to the side where you're doing the nanuim. Now that's the way the Chavetz Chaim seems to be machriya over here. However, earlier in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Lamid Zayin, so that's on Kuf Chav Daled Amid Beis in Sif Ches. Sif Ches, Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Lamid Zayin. Over there, he brought down a machlokes. He says over here, it's a little more than halfway through this Ois Katan Mishnah Berurah. Ubechala na'anuim yavi seif halulav neged hechazeh. And every time you make the nanuim, you should bring the lulav back to your chest. He brings this down from the Magen Avram, B'Shem Kisavim. Then he brings down from the Elya Rabbah, Ubel Yerabah Hevi B'Shem Maharil. The Elya Rabbah brings from the Maharil, Shahayad Nishar Oimid B'Makaimai, that when the Maharil made the nanuim, he stood in his place, meaning he did not turn to the different directions. Upanav LeMizrach, he stood in his place, always facing the Mizrach. B'chala nanuim, when he made all of the nanuim, rak hipech yodav neged aruchos. He just moved his hand in those directions. So he brought down here in Lamed Zayin 2 different opinions. He brought down a Magen Avram, who said that you should always bring the lulav back to your chest. Then he brought down this Elya Rabbah in the name of the Maharil, who says that the Maharil didn't turn in the 4 different directions, he always stayed facing the Mizrach. Okay, if you look in the Sharet Tzion, Ois Cotton Mem Tes, the Chavetz Chaim says that these are 2 differing opinions. The Magen Avram, who brings down in the name of the Ksavim that you should always bring back the lulav to your chest, says the Chavetz Chaim in the Sharet Tzion, Ois Cotton Mem Tes, the implication of that is that your chest is always facing the direction that you're making the nanuim. So that every time you make the nanuim, it's exactly the way it is when you make the nanuim to the Mizrach. You're extending away from your chest, and you're bringing back to your chest. In order for that to be true, your chest always has to be facing the direction that you're doing the nanuim. When you're going east, your chest is facing east. So you extend away from the chest, and you come back to the chest. When you have to do south, you turn to the south. Your chest is facing the south. And again, you extend away opposite your chest, and you bring back to your chest. That's the Chavetz Chaim and Ois Cotton Mem Tes says, that's the implication of the Ksavim that's brought down from the Magen Avram. The Eliyah Rabbah brings down from the Maharil, not that way. The Eliyah Rabbah brings back from the Maharil that the Maharil always faced Mizrach, and he just moved the Lulav and the Esrig in that direction. Over here, in Ois Cotton Mem Zayin, to me, the Mishnah Berurah sounds like he's a little bit blending the 2. What he's doing is, he's saying that, yes, you're always going to come back to your chest. So if I'm making the nanuim in that direction, I could face Mizrach, right? Let's say that's Mizrach. And now I'm making my nanuim to the south. So now I'm going to do this. I'm not going to turn to the south. I'm going to take my lulav and esrik, and I'm going to tilt the lulav towards the south, and I'm going to go like this. So I'm going to go to the south, and then come back to my chest. Go to the south. So he's saying, you do come back to your chest, but you're not going opposite your chest, because I'm not turning that way. I'm staying this way, and going like that. So says the Mishnah Berurah over here, and he continues, the Chen L'tzad Ma'ariv. And the same thing, when you're going behind you to the west, because you're facing east, what do? You don't turn around. You take the lulav and the esrig, and yater roish lulav al ksefay. You go over your shoulder. So I start by my chest, and I go like this, and come back. Like that, and come back. Like that, and come back. So says the Mishnah Berurah. U'molich u'mevi. And you're molich, you move the lulav away from you, umevi, and you bring it back to you, shalosh pa'amim, 3 times, v'achakach l'tzad tzafon, and then you do so to the north, molich umevi, shalosh pa'amim, v'achakach l'mayla, and then up, v'achakach l'mata, and then down. And we said yesterday, you don't turn the lulav upside down, you just lower it down. Hakoil, in each direction, molich umevi, shalosh pa'amim, you move the lulav away, and you bring it back 3 times, and you shake while going away and while coming back. K'moi b'mizrach, the same way you do when you're going to the Mizrach. Sorry, bear with me for just 1 second. Okay. Now, that is what the Mishnah Berurah says. That's the way the Mishnah Berurah says that you do it. However, we did see earlier in the Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Lamad Zayin that there do seem to be 2 minhagim, and in Sharet Tzion Ois Cotton Mem Tes earlier that I spoke about in Mishnah Berurah's Cotton Lamad Zayin, he says Al Kain Yasek Kol Echad Kiminhagoy. He brings down from the Berurah Yaakov, everybody should follow his minig. They should do it the way according to his minig. I can tell you that, again, I saw several times, I saw the Rishiva Zatzal, I watched Rav Moshe Zechesad V'Kadosh Levracha make Nanuim, and the Rishiva Zatzal did turn in the directions where he was making the Nanuim. He didn't stand facing the Mizrach, he turned in each direction, and he made the Nanuim facing each direction that he made the Nanuim. And so too I see by my Rebbe, Yibad L'chaim, Reb Reuven Feinstein Shlita, he does the same thing. He turns in the direction of the Nanuim. He doesn't turn fully around what he does to the back. I'm not sure if the camera could get me if I stand up. We'll see. So if I stand up, you can see my body. You can't see my face. So he would do like this when he's turning around. He would go like this. So he didn't just turn his feet fully around, but he turned mostly facing the back, and that's what I remember the Yeshiva Zatzal doing as well. Okay. Now we turn the page to Kuf Chaf Hey Amid Beis, and let's go to Sif Yod Aleph, top line in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber, Tzarech lechaber ha'esrig lelulav b'shas ni'anui. When you make the na'anuim, the esrig has to be mechuber. It has to be touching the esrig, the lulav bundle, ulenanea b'shteyem yachad. And you have to do the na'anuim with the lulav bundle and the esrig together. Okay, this is a very interesting dichotomy. We saw earlier, we learned out from the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ulekachtem lochem pre-eitz hadar." You take an esrig. Then it says, "Kapos tamarim aluliv ve'anath eitz avos and hadasim ve'arvei nachal and aravos." So we learned out from that pasuk that the esrig is separate from the lulav bundle. Ulekachtem lochem pre-eitz hadar. You take an esrig. We got an esrig. Then kapos tamarim aluliv and so the lulav, the hadasim, and the aravos go together in a bundle. The esrig is separate. Therefore, we even saw a shita that says that if you took the esrig in one hand together with the lulav bundle, we had a shita that said that you're not yotzeh because you're not doing it properly. The esrig is supposed to be separate from the lulav bundle. Certainly, if you would take the esrig and you would make it igud, you would bind it together with the other three minim. You're not yotzeh because you're not doing it the right way. It's supposed to be separate. However, we are supposed to be mechaber. You take the esrig in one hand, the lulav bundle in the other hand, but then you bring them together and you do hold the esrig next to the lulav bundle. That you do have to do. Says the Mishnah Kat Mem Ches, Tzarech lechaber esrig. Da'afte inenu imayim ba'aguda. Even though it's not supposed to be together with the lulav hadasim and aravos in a bundle, al kalpanim tzarech liyos mechuber imay. However, it does have to be mechuber. Now, why is that? Why does it have to be mechuber? Why don't we take from that pasuk and say, well, it sounds to me like the adarabah, they got to be apart. They're not supposed to be mechuber. There's a beautiful Dirshu footnote over here that brings down a beautiful Berurah. It's footnote 81. Says the footnote here, Betama davar shekulam tzrichim lihiyos ba'aguda achas. As far as the tam, the reason why the lulav bundle and the esrig have to be together, I don't like the phraseology over here, ba'aguda achas, because no, it's not supposed to be in one igud. You're not allowed to tie the esrig together, but you do have to hold them in mechuber. Hevi b'Berurah, the Berurah brings down a different medrash from a medrash rabbah. Beautiful, you got to hear this. Pre-eitz hadar elu Yisrael. The esrig is an allegory. It's a mashal for Klal Yisrael. Ma esrig zeh yesh by tam v'yesh by reach. The esrig has taste and it has aroma. It has a scent. Kach Yisrael, so to Klal Yisrael. Yesh behem b'nei Adam. There are people at Klal Yisrael. Sheyesh behem Torah. They have Torah. That's tam. They have tam. They have Torah. V'yesh behem ma'asim tovim. They also have ma'asim tovim. Reach is ma'asim tovim. Why is reach ma'asim tovim? Because reach is something that you could get from afar. Ma'asim tovim, when you do ma'asim tovim, you're helping somebody else. You do a ma'aser, it has ripple effects. Your deed has ripple effects, and it works its way down. So that's reach. So there's tam is Torah, reach is ma'asim tovim. So you have people in Klal Yisrael that are like the esrig. They have tam, they have Torah, and they have reach, they have ma'asim tovim. Kapos tamarim, the lulav, elu Yisrael. The lulav is also an allegory to Klal Yisrael. Ma tam razu, just like a date. Yesh ba tam, it has taste. Dates are very tasty. Ve'ein ba reach, but it doesn't have a smell. There's no strong scent to a date. Kachem Yisrael, there are also Yidden. Yesh behem Torah, they have tam, they have Torah. Aber ve'ein behem ma'asim tovim. They learn, but unfortunately they don't have Ma'asim Tovim. So they don't have Reach. Nope. They have Tam. They sit in the Mismedrash. They learn. Aber es verfällt sich the Ma'asim Tovim. V'anaf eitzava is the Hadassim. Elu Yisrael. The Hadassim are also, it stands for Klal Yisrael. Ma Hadas yesh by Reach. The Hadas, a lot of people take the Hadassim and they take the leaves and put them in the Besamim after Sukkot. So yesh by Reach, it has a nice scent. So they have Ma'asim Tovim. Vein by Tam, but it has no Tam. Kach Yisrael, there are Yidden, yesh be'em, sheyesh be'em Ma'asim Tovim. There are Yidden that have Ma'asim Tovim. Oh, they do Gemilas Chasadim, they do Chesed, they do Bikacholim. Vein be'em Torah, but you can't get them to go to a shir. They don't have Torah. V'arvei nachal elu Yisrael. And the Aravas are also Yidden. Ma Arava zu ein batam vein bareach. The Arava, no Tam, no Reach. Kachem Yisrael. Unfortunately, there are also Yidden. Yesh b'em b'nei Adam. You have people she'ein b'em loy Torah v'loy Ma'asim Tovim. Unfortunately, you have Yidlach, no Ma'asim Tovim, no good deeds, so there's no Reach, and no Tam, no Torah. What should the Rebbeinu Shalom do with these people? La'abdam chas v'chalilu, to destroy them. Yeah, sure. You can't destroy them. And Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, the Klal Yisrael, Yidlach. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't want to be ma'abed them. So what's the Rebbeinu Shalom supposed to do with these people? El Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, Yukshiru kula maguda achas. Let's bind them together in one aguda. All of the Yidden. All of these disparate types of Yidden. And let's bring them all together. V'hei mechaprim elu al elu. So the ones that have Tam and Reach, they have Torah and the Ma'asim Tovim, they could be mechaper for a lot of the other ones that are lacking. The ones that have Torah and have no Ma'asim Tovim, they could be mechaper for the ones that have Ma'asim Tovim but no Torah. I have Torah, you have Ma'asim Tovim, I'll be mechaper for you. The one that have Ma'asim Tovim, no Torah, they'll be mechaper for the one that has Torah, no Ma'asim Tovim, so they'll be mechaper for each other. And the ones that have neither, all three will be mechaper for the Yidden that have nothing. And if you taka do this, if you make one agud out of Gans Klal Yisrael, Oisa Shah Ani Misala, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, then I am uplifted. Hadahu Diksiv, like the pasuk in Amos says, Habayna Bashamayim Ma'aloisav. The Emasai Hu Misala, one is the Rebbeinu Shalom uplifted, Kishay Masuyim Aguda Achas. The Chain Hevi Mekarla Din Zeh Midivrei Gemara, he brings out a Gemara in Menachos. What a beautiful medrash. So that's why we have to bring the esrig together with the lulav bundle. Now, after seeing that medrash, now let me read to you an Aruch HaShulchan. You got to hear what the Aruch HaShulchan says about keeping the esrig together with the lulav. So I think everybody knows this halacha, or it's just what they're used to doing. Everybody holds the esrig together with the lulav when they're making the nanuim. You never see anybody, do nanuim with the esrig over here, the lulav over here. Everybody knows. They take it, they put it together, and they make nanuim. When they make the bracha and they make nanuim, everybody puts the lulav and the esrig together. But how about the rest of Hal? Or how about when they're going around for Ishanis? Oh yeah, I see people, saying how they got the lulav here, they got the esrig here. B'tzeis Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. They're not really using the lulav and the esrig. Now I'm saying how with the lulav and the esrig, but I'm not making the bracha, I'm not making the nanuim, I'm not being oisik so much in the mitzvah of Daled Minim right now that I should think that I have to hold them together. You got to hear an Aruch HaShulchan. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, Yekarev hayadayim zeh lazeh. Make sure you bring the hands together, laman yechubar ha'esrig el ha'shloisha minim, so that the esrig should be mechubar, it should be attached to the other three minim. Now get ready for these next words. V'chalila lahafridan zeh mizeh. Chalila, that you should separate the esrig from the lulav bundle. V'chein yinoig b'shas abiras ha'halal u'ba'ishanis. And you should also comport yourself that way while you say halal and by Hashanis. You should make sure to keep them together. Keep the two hands together. But you hear that lashon? The chalila lahafridan zemizeh. Chalila, that you should separate one from the other. Okay. Now we go, let's finish Sif Yod Aleph. Second line down, says the Ramah. V'chala na'anuim einon ma'akvin. The nanuim, bottom line, the nanuim are not ma'akiv. You're yotze the mitzvah even without the nanuim. Ube'ezid derech shenianea yotze b'di'evet. However you do the nanuim, you shook it this way, you shook it that way, you did the directions in the different order, you did shake while you were extending and coming back, you didn't, you did some of the nanuim, not the other. Yotze b'di'evet, you're yotze. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut memtes. Yotze b'di'evet. Va'af di'im loyin naneh klal. Gam ken yotze. The truth is, if you didn't do any nanuim at all, you're also yotze the mitzvah. Na'anuim ena ma'akvim. Because the act of the nanuim is not ma'akiv. Once you pick up the lulav and the esrig, you're yotze the mitzvah. You can make a bracha. You're holding the esrig upside down. You pick it back up. You are yotze the mitzvah. You have a lekicha tama. You're holding the daled minim. You're yotze. The nanuim is not a chiyav daraisa, so you're yotze the mitzvah. You without the nanuim. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, mikam makom, nevertheless, sham, in the case when you didn't make any nanuim at all, toiv lachsav litlayu l'naneya. It would be a good thing. So if you did what I just described, you took you made your bracha, you turned the esrog over, you held it for a few seconds, and then you put it back down. You never made any nanuim. Toiv, it would be good that you should pick up the dal minim again and you should make nanuim. It doesn't say you're chayiv, because you can't be mechayiv. It's a darabanan. It's not a daraisa. It's to say that you're chayiv and you're not yoitza. If you didn't do it, you are yoitza. You're yoitza in the midst of daled minim. But toiv, it's good that you should go now and make the nanuim. Masha ain't kain bazeh. But if you did nanuim and you didn't do them properly, over there the Chavetz Chaim doesn't even say that it's toiv to do a redo and a do over and go make the nanuim properly. Whatever nanuim you made, you're yotze. Now we go to Sif Yud Beis, and the Shulchan Aruch says the Mechaber. Arba minim alalu, these four minim, the lulav, the adasim, the aravis, and the esrik, ma'akvin zeh. They are ma'akiv one the other. What does that mean? Shem chisa layechad mehem. If you're missing one of the dal minim, lo yavarech al ashar, you can't make a bracha if you don't have an esrik. You have a lulav bundle. You have lulav, adasim, and aravis, all beautiful, all kosher, but you don't have an esrik. You can't go make a bracha on the lulav and the adasim and the aravis. You don't have a full set of dal minim. Each one of the minim are ma'akiv the others, the ma'akiv zel zeh. Aval, however, says the Mechaber, if you don't have them, noitlan lezecher ba'alma. If you only had three minim, you would take them as a zecher to the mitzvah of the dal minim, bein b'yom rishain, bein b'shar yomim, whether we're dealing with the first day of Yom Tov when it's a mitzvah daraisa, or we're dealing with the rest of Yom Tov when it's the darabanan, you would take them. You wouldn't make a bracha. You can't make a bracha on three minim, but you would pick them up and hold them as a zecher to the mitzvah. And he brings this down from the Rosh, the Rabbeinu Yeruchim. However, you should know that this is a machlokes rishonim. Not all the rishonim agree with this. Some of the rishonim, and they don't agree also to what the Ramah says here, bein b'yom rishain, bein b'shar yomim. There are those that hold, I think the Berurah is one of them, that on the rest of Yom Tov, from the second day on, I believe the Berurah holds that you can actually make a bracha on 1 min, 2 minim, 3 minim from the second day and on. We don't paskin that way, Lamaisa. Don't go make a bracha. But there are cheetahs in the Rishonim that hold you can. What's the rationale? Very simple. The reason why the minim are ma'akiv one and the other is again because of that drasha ulekachtem lekicha tama, that you need a complete lekicha. A complete lekicha means all four minim. Now let's remember, what's another halacha that we learn out from that? We learn out that there's a psul of chosar. If one of the dal minim are missing something, if the esrig is missing part of the esrig, we learned it depends how much it's missing, etc. But if the esrig is missing something, there's a psul of chosar. And we said that the psul of chosar is only on day one. The psul of chosar doesn't apply from the second day and on. So some of the Rishonim want to say, you see that lekicha tama is only negeya on the first day when it's a daraisa. But lekicha tama is not negeya the rest of Yom Tov. Same way, lochem is only negeya on day one. It's not Negeya day 2 and going forward. So maybe L'kichatam is also not Negeya day 2 and day 2 and going forward. So if you only have 3 minim, you could actually make a bracha. The Mechaber, the Ramah, they say no. You have to have all 4 minim, and the Ramah says doesn't matter which day it is. You have to have all 4 minim. You can't make a bracha on less than 4 minim, but you do take them, whatever you have, you take them as a zecher. Says the Mishnah cut nun ma'akvin zeh. They're ma'akiv each other to be in a l'kichatama, because you need a l'kichatama. The kulan mitzvah achased, and they're all part of one mitzvah, so you got to have all 4. Lo yavarech al hashar, you don't make a bracha on the other minim. Afilu im yodea beberurah, even if you know 100% for certain. Shelo b'soif yavayu liyadai kulan, you have your lulav bundle, but you don't have your esrig. You left your esrig in shul. You call home, and you get your kid, listen, I left my esrig at home. We're already up to Hal. Could you hurry up and bring me my esrig? Kid says, 100% Dad, I got it in my hand. I'm getting on my electric scooter and I'm coming over right now. And this kid is trustworthy as they come. So you know my esrig is on the way. What's the matter? So I'll make a bracha on the lulav bundle. And then when I get the esrig, I'll take the esrig also. Says the Mishnah, no. Afilim yedeh beberurah shelo b'soif yavayu liyadai kulan. Even though you're 100% certain that you're going to have all 4 minim, since they're not all here when you make the bracha, you cannot make a bracha. Now, Shartzia and Ois Cut and Samach Gimel. No, that's not what I... No, drop that. Forget the Mishnah. I mean, don't forget it. But I'm not referring to Shartzia and Ois Cut and Samach Gimel. He says there are others that disagree with this. Hey, what is the reason for this? Why is it that you can't make the bracha? So the truth is, we always see this by brachas hamitzvahs. When the Baal Tekeh makes a bracha on shofar, the shofar has to be there. We learned earlier by shofar. Let's say the Baal Tekeh makes a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysav v'vitzivanu l'shmaya kol shofar. No shofar. There's no shofar in the shul. He's got to make another bracha. Why does he have to make another bracha? Because his bracha was on a mitzvah that he's not prepared to accomplish. You can't do the mitzvah if there's no shofar. So what kind of bracha is that? You made a bracha on a shofar, you made a bracha on a mitzvah that you can't accomplish. That's not a bracha. You got to make a new bracha. You have to have a shofar when you make the bracha. So dal minim, you have to have dal minim when you make the bracha. If you don't have dal minim, your bracha is not a bracha. You can't accomplish the mitzvah. You can't make a bracha on a mitzvah when you can't accomplish the mitzvah. If somebody sits down by the Seder night and he's a Navardika, he doesn't have matzahs, but he has betachin. He has a moon in betachin. The matzahs are going to come. So he goes ahead and he makes a bracha. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvaysav stivanu al achilas matzah. You're looking at him, he's crazy. What are you, out of your mind? You can't make a bracha al achilas matzah if you don't have matzah. I have betachin. Me, I'm a Navardika. I know it's coming. And then, sure enough, somebody opens the door, brings him matzah. He says, see that? Told you, gotta have a talking. My matzah came. Guess what, buddy? You gotta make a new bracha. Your bracha wasn't a bracha. You made a bracha on a mitzvah that you can't accomplish. That's not a bracha. So, it seems to me that that's the reason over here. You don't have an esrig. You can't make a bracha if you don't have an esrig. You don't have the dal minim. The Ramah said, it's all the same. Day 1, the rest of Yom Tov, if you don't have all of the dal minim, you cannot make a bracha. Hine Rashal b'tshuva, the Marshal writes in a tshuva, Kasavi writes, that this happened once by him, that they didn't have all daled minim, and people came to ask him a shayla. Let's say we have the lulav bundle, but we don't have a srogim. What do we do? Kasav, he wrote, the HaTorah, he paskind, l'shliach tzibur, for the shots, for the chazan, litoil, to take the 3 minim that he had, ulananeya, and to make na'anuim koydem halal, before halal. Normally, we make the bracha on the tilas lulav before halal. So they only had, let's say, 3 minim. So he told the shliach tzibur, you pick up the 3 minim that you have, don't make a bracha, but make nanuim before halal, like you would normally do. If you had all 4 minim, you'd make a bracha and you'd make nanuim. Now, don't make a bracha, but make nanuim with the minim you have, ubishas halal. And then by halal, haidul Hashem kitayv, kilo chasta, yomena Yisrael, kilo chasta, make nanuim with the minim that you have. No brachas. But he paskin only the shots. The chazan should make nanuim with the minim that he had. Aval achevim lo yitlu klal. But the tzibur, nobody should take the minim that they have. Why? The chayshinan, because we have to be concerned, sheyavayu lital gamkein b'shana acheres ulevarich. If we're going to tell the whole tzibur, oh, you only have 3 minim, take the 3 minim that you have, they might learn from that, oh, okay, you taka could use only 3 minim without a fourth, and another year, they might actually make a bracha. So the shots that somebody should do it as a zecher, he paskin that the shots should do it as a zecher without a bracha, but the tzibur should not do it even without a bracha. But the El Yerabba clearly disagrees with this. V'daitoi, he says that not only the shots, even the tzibur should use what they have, they should take it for a zecher. V'daitoi, his opinion is that the whole tzibur should do it. V'adarabba, he said quite the opposite. If the tzibur is not going to take the minim that they have, and only the shots will, a different problem could come out in another year. They might learn from this that not everybody has to take the dal minim. The shots could be moitzi, the tzibur. And if you remember, we learned from the pasuk that that's not the din. We learned the pasuk says ulekachtem, a lashon rabim. You all have to take. Every individual needs to take the daled minim. It's not that the shliach tzibur could be moitzi the tzibur. V'chein mistimas ha'mechaber v'harav, and from the way it was written in general terms by the mechaber and the Ramah, mashpa gamkein d'chol yachid v'yachid yachid litla l'zechab alma, that this applies to everybody. You don't find that the mechaber or the Ramah differentiated between the shliach tzibur and the tzibur. Okay, now we go weiter. So we're holding in the middle of Sif Yud Beis, after the words of the Ramah, 4 lines up for the bottom near the end of the line. Let's say you do have all 4 of the minim. And you pick them up one at a time. So you make a bracha shekid yishanim v'mitzvayis al netilas lulav, and you pick up your lulav. Then you put it down, and you pick up your adasim. Then you put them down, you pick up your aravas. Then you put them down, and you pick up your esrik. Says the mechaber, yotza, your yotza. Okay, says the Mishnah is cutting on base. Unutalam echad echad yotza. The eged she'anu oisin balulav, because this that we make an aguda, this that we make a lulav bundle out of the lulav and the adasim and the aravas, hurak lemitzvah ba'alma. We saw in Sif Aleph that's only his snarlafan of the mitzvahs. That's no mitzvah. That's zekeli va'anveyu. That's his snarlafan of the mitzvahs. V'loy li'ikuva. That's not li'ikuva. It's not ma'akiv. You don't have to have a bundle. V'zashminam is Sif Aleph. V'hacha over here, ashmi'inon yoyser revusa. Here, the Mechaber is telling me even a bigger chiddush. In Sif Aleph, we saw that tying them together is only Zakeli Vanveyu. You don't have to tie them together. But over here, we're learning a new halacha. Over here, we're learning that you don't even have to hold them all at once. From Sif Aleph, we might have thought, yeah, you don't have to tie it together, but you pick up the lulav, the adasim, and the aravas together at one time. Over here, the mechaber is telling us, no, you don't have to pick them up at one time. You can do zakazek, gam kin yotza, you're still yotza. Says the Ramah, Haggah, 3 lines up, middle of the line. But you have to have all of them in front of you. Says the Mishnah is cutting gimel kulam lefanav, you have to have all of them in front of you. Kalaymar, that is to say, smuchim loy. They have to be close to you. They have to be close to you. And it was earlier we said that you have to have them. You have to have a lulav, adasim, aravas, and an esrik. If your esrik is at home and you know your kid is bringing it, that's not enough. Now we're saying something else. Not only that, they all have to be close to you. The haloi mavarich bracha achas tekula, because you're making one bracha on all of them. Kidol kamei v'lo yitztarich lahasik beineim. We don't want to put you in a position where you're going to have to make a hefsik to go walk across the shul and get the other minim. Okay, let's finish off this sif. So 3 lines from the bottom, the Ramah said, now we go to the second line up. If you are doing this, if you're taking the minim one at a time, you take the lulav first, and you make the bracha on the lulav, gam al ha'acherim. So you make a bracha, al netilas lulav, and you have in mind that bracha is going on all 4 of the minim. Then you pick up the lulav. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why do you take the lulav first? The kevan shemazkirin oisay babracha, because since the lulav is the one that you mentioned specifically in the bracha, tzarich sheyehei samach labracha, it has to be the first one that you pick up after the bracha. But you have to have in mind that the bracha goes on the other minim as well. And with that bracha, you cover everything. Even though you're going to pick up each one separately. Okay, I was actually hoping to get a little bit further, but I see we're already going a little bit long, so we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom said, Yeshua's for Parnasa and Shidduchim to all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the BS called Tzedek B'meher V'yameinu. I'm recording this share on Erev Shabbos, so everybody should have a good, gebenched, restful, wonderful Shabbos. Be well.